Quiet on the set. Stand by. Action.
Welcome to this episode of Business Upfront. I'd like to first show you some video clips of today's guests, so check it out.
Raise your hands if you're dealing with difficult people in your life. Okay, now those of you who did not raise your hands, you are those difficult people. That's important. Look around, there they are. It's you. If you criticize others' ideas, they'll almost never use yours, no matter how good they are. Your ability to manage and deal with people you don't like will define your greatness.
When we go and have lunch at a business meeting, that you're going to stare at your phone. I'm going to say, Hillary, come on, hey, come on. You're going to go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Garrison. Oh, no. That's what's going to happen, okay? When you take a look at all the research, we saw some stuff from Accenture and some stuff from the Harvard Review and the stuff we partnered with Gallup, and we looked at all this stuff. Think about the people in your life that you know listen to what you say on a consistent basis, how much influence they have over you.
All right, so I produced some of those clips a long time ago. So my next guest is someone I've known since 2001. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and consultant who works with companies connecting on real issues of influence, leadership, teamwork, the employee experience, and change. So put your hands together for my friend, Garrison Wynn. Hey, Garrison.
Hey, Doug, how's it going?
It's going good. We actually, you're in Houston.
I am.
Yeah, still.
Yes, still. I'm still here.
I'm still in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we survived this blizzard that we just had. Isn't that the craziest thing? Negative 16 degrees?
Yeah,
What?
crazy. Yeah, so we had like 20 degrees in Houston, and of course they called the National Guard, and the city was shut down. I had no water and no electricity for 4 days. I was sitting on my couch dressed like I'm going dog sledding. That's what I was doing. But what was interesting is while all that's happening in Houston, there's a 8-year-old kid walking to school in Minneapolis.
That's right,
it's just
barefoot.
He's barefooted.
Yeah.
You know, it's just.
But
so I know what that means.
the whole state shuts down here. Now, what's interesting is, I'm not going to get all political, but the grid, we weren't connected to the grid, and so our electric company was not equipped to supply power during such cold, frigid temperatures. What?
They supplied power, just not to all of us.
Yeah.
Not to all of us. We had rolling blackouts where people had power missing from parts of their,
But you went 4 full days without power or water?
No. I had like maybe an hour of power. I had just enough power to make me mad. Just enough water and power to make me miserable. Yes.
What we were doing was like, okay, we should be good for a while. And me and my wife like to watch TV, Netflix, and all that stuff. That's just our thing. So we start getting into a show, and we're like, oh, okay, here we go. And like you said, it was about a half hour into it. I'm like, my God. So we went back to listening to an audiobook on my phone. And then the kids go, this is boring. I'm going to go upstairs. And then the power comes back on. I'm like, oh, shit, I forgot to power my phone the last time that it was on. So let me get it going now.
I was actually, just something that was really terrible happened to a lot of us out there, is I was actually forced to talk to my girlfriend for like 5 hours.
How?
And it was awful. No one should do that. It was, there's no TV.
And you had to listen to her and everything.
We had to talk to each other. It was horrendous.
For those of you who are not in the state of Texas, and you've heard about it on all the major national networks, that Texas was shut down, and you're hearing a story that is very exaggerated. It is very exaggerated. We were fine. It was like camping.
No, I wasn't fine.
You
Doug.
were fine. You had blankets.
You
were inside.
I was wearing snowshoes in the hallway on the carpet. It was ridiculous.
You look fine. Look at you. You survived. You survived.
Well, then you're just seeing the studio. I mean, that's the house.
I got you. So we survived, everybody. The snowstorm came and went, and guess what? The day after Mother Nature tried to kill us, it decided to be 70 degrees the very next day, and so we're wearing shorts. It was quite All seriousness, when I met you back in the early 2000s,
Right.
This is, when the internet kind of was blossoming, it was the wild, wild west. You were in the middle of getting your website put up. And back then it was a big deal to have your own website. So for those of you who don't know Garrison, why don't you tell us who you are and what the heck do you do?
Oh, well, who I am is I'm Garrison Wynn. I've been speaking at conventions professionally for 25 years on 5 continents. And I talk on influence, how to get people to do what you want them to do, and how that relates to leadership and change management and safety mostly. So those 3 areas. And I've written a couple best-selling books. And I really focus a lot on what people can actually do immediately, not the view from 30,000 feet. What can you actually do now to make a difference? What does an influential people actually specifically do now that make a difference? So not an academic exercise, but basically the actions that they take.
Yeah, and he's kind of like my Jerry Seinfeld friend. I'm like, so you do that, you ever notice thing? I go, Garrison, so you're still doing the raise your hands if you're dealing with difficult people thing, and we all have our separate lives. What's that?
You shot the original video. Doug, I met Doug back in the mid 50s, and he shot the original. It was like 54 after the war. He shot the original. I believe the original video for 2002 that went on when we put that video on the internet, we were talking to speakers bureaus who go, what? You got video on the internet? What's that? It was like hard to believe.
Yeah. And not only that, but all the great sound bites were stacked together.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Well, what was our idea was just to cut it like that. And it worked out very well. And Doug, that video made millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands, but it made millions of dollars.
I probably am regretting now that we maybe should have had a different payment arrangement.
It was you charged a lot of money, but you weren't cheap back then. You were not that cheap.
No, I wasn't.
No, you weren't.
I wasn't cheap for people like you.
But you were cheap for others? What are you talking about?
I was less expensive for others. You know why?
So I got ripped off. What are you talking about?
So maybe I did okay. Maybe I did okay on the pricing. You were the person that in my company, I established a rule called the pain in the ass client fee.
Oh, yeah.
And it started like we were talking earlier offline about Lou Gehrig. He was patient 0. They named the disease after him. You are the founder of the pain in the ass client.
Oh, I'm the original.
I say that in the very most kind and loving way because we're friends now. But at the time, I was a young whippersnapper trying to find my way through video, and I come across this Garrison Wynn guy who's very detail oriented. And I respect that now. But man, I was trying to please him and move a clip this way. And he's like, what are you doing? No, I wanted it that way. I'm like, hold on, I got to do, wait, no, I said I wanted it this way. And then I'd spend some time doing it that way. And I'd hit the play button. And he's like, nah, I like it the way it was before. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was like, oh my God, this guy has totally lost his mind. But I'll tell you what, that push and pull, Garrison, that push and pull that we had together, if it generated millions of dollars for you, I think that's a formula for success.
That original video was amazing. And remember when it went up on the website, and it was 2000, I think it was May, of 2002 that went up. No, it's not. You shot it. Yeah, you shot it in April, went up in May. Okay. I remember it was an April event. Was it in Dallas? Maybe it was.
Might be.
But it went up in April. In May. And we had to explain to people. Said, hey, send us your VHS. I'm like, well, right. Do you have the internet? And then, of course, they'd have dial up or whatever it was, or back then. And they were, oh wow, we're watching you on the internet.
You said VHS tape, and I just remembered. I think I remember the printed labels that will go on the spine of the VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. And I remember Garrison Wynn, and I put them in the black cases and had your logo on it. And I shipped you these VHS tapes to fling out to people. Oh, yeah. Did that really happen?
It really happened. And we used to ship them all over the country. People would go, hey, send me your VHS. It was a really difficult thing to get people to watch it. Remember, we forget about how this works. So in 1996, I had a website. No one had a website in 96. I had one. We were working on it. We had it up and going. And we were running ads, trying to advertise for the first time to get business. And the number one search engine back then was Ask Jeeves was a search engine.
Oh, yeah,
But there was this other one that was kind of crappy, but it was doing okay. The guy was friendly. We were running ads with them, and they were called Backrub. They changed their name to Google. We used to talk to Larry all the time when it was called Backrub. And one day in 1997, he goes, "I think I call the company Google." I said, "That's a terrible name," but that was in 97.
Yeah, Google. What's a Google?
Yeah.
Well, then the Yahoo, and then there was a Netscape Navigator and AOL, all the fun web browsers that basically got narrowed down to Google now.
Right. I was the 44th person to advertise on Google. I was their 44th AdWords customer.
Really?
But again, Ask Jeeves was really what they thought people wanted. But Ask Jeeves was basically just asking questions. Google was literally looking at advertisement. Google, the vision they had, Larry was right. What Larry said in 97 was right, that people want to be able to go on here and find what they're looking for, and that could be anything. And he was selling golf clubs and everything else. Back then, it was only golf clubs. It was golf clubs and porn. That's what the money was back in those days.
Yeah. What Larry who?
The guy, Larry, I forget his name. Larry, another dude. They were the founders of the company.
Founders of
Yeah, I forget his name. Yeah, he used to email us all the time. Can you look that up? Larry and was it?
I'm Googling right now.
We have our staff looking into that right now.
Larry Page?
Anyway.
Larry who?
Larry Page?
Yeah, that's Larry. Yep.
Larry Page.
Like Jimmy?
Now, the video that you're talking about, the one it's got 76,000 views on your YouTube channel.
That's one version of it. The other version had about 135,000 views.
Wow.
And then another version had 8 or 9 or 10. There's 5 or 6 versions. The lowest has around 10,000. So I don't know how many views that is. But here's the thing, though. That maybe not a lot of views by today's standards. But if you take a look at who's viewing it, only someone who's looking to buy a speaker is viewing that, or someone who's encountering it on YouTube who is Googling my name or Googling speaker finds that. So if you compare the searches to that, it's a real high number.
Yeah, no. So back then, that's when we started working together, and why in the hell have you decided to be in this field? I mean, there's lots of things you could be. Why?
Well, why am I still doing this? Why am I doing it?
Yeah, you've been doing it for this long. I mean, surely some point you went, I'm ready to do something else. What is it you like about it?
I do this because I just lack other skills. I mean, I just lack a lot of other skills. I mean,
embrace what you're good at, pretty much. Well, no, but seriously, you like it, right?
I was a pro stand-up when I was a young guy, and then did corporate America and kind of went back into stand-up a little bit. And I just decided, it was 1995, and I decided I was going to quit corporate America because I got tired of making other people rich. That's why I quit.
Okay, well, back up before corporate America, you were in the comedy circuit. What era was that?
I started like in the 80s out of college, and I used to work with Ron White, Andrew Dice Clay, did a bunch of shows with Mitch Hedberg, with Richard Jenney, Steve Califf, Gary Shandling a little bit.
Some of the other names were like, who's the guy?
So Sam
Kinison.
Kinison was the doorman. He was the doorman at the Comedy Store, and Mitzi, who owned it, wouldn't let him up.
Wow.
But that's a little bit before, a tiny bit before me.
Pauly Shore?
By the time I was doing it, Sam was already there. What now?
Pauly
was about, when I was doing stand-up at the Comedy Store, Pauly was about this big. He was a little pain in the ass. He used to get behind the bar and shoot the bar gun at people. He would shoot like Coca-Cola into the audience. He was like about 14 years old.
Wasn't his mom the owner of it or something?
Yeah, Mitzi owned it. Yeah.
Mitzi, okay. See, we did an interview for a TV show back in the shortly after we were working together, a show called Grin and Bear It, and got some footage of interviewing him with our host, and he talked about the comedy club and some about that. So you kind of were running with those guys back in the cocaine snorting, drug using days. Yeah.
There's probably, I would like to say, 150 of us who are kind of, that you don't know who we were. We were mostly road comics, and we were, if you go see a comedy show, you got the first guy who's a local guy who sucks. You got the second guy that would be like me, that you don't know who they are, do 30 minutes, and the headliner does 45 minutes or an hour. That was a typical comedy show back then. You did 2 shows Thursday, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday, 1 show Sunday, on to the next city.
What did they pay back then for that? Like, there's probably different rates. Like if you were the warm up, it'd be one. But you mentioned before that you would go to certain parts of the country where you were the headliner.
Yeah. Well, if I'm in LA, I'm the middle. If I'm in New York at Caroline's, I'm the middle. But if, I'm in Valdosta, Georgia, I'm the headliner.
Right.
So,
but what kind of scratch would do comics get back then with that?
Well, you can make $1,500 like doing that whole week. And that kind of money in 1987 was you were earning a living. You could earn a living.
You could pay for your Coke and a shared apartment.
Yeah, right. You got work. Yeah, you spent all the money that second night on drugs, but still. But the thing is that it got a little bit worse in the 90s. Comedy was worse. It paid worse. Yeah.
Interesting. So
comedy, people stopped going to comedy clubs like they used to. There was definitely the death of comedy there. I'm going to say around 92, 93.
Is that when Eddie Murphy kind of came into Saturday Night Live? You saw a lot of big comics. You saw a lot of big time comics that should have been having big shows out on the road coming to those shows. Yeah, that's how you knew. So if we
he could have played an arena earlier. So.
Right. So if you summed it up, it would be that that was, how long did you do the comedy thing? How many years? A couple of years?
If I totaled the years up that I was doing it professionally, probably 6.
Okay, 6. And you were about how old?
I would have been 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. And then after I was 30 years old and kind of got my life back together, I did a little stand up after that as well.
So basically you said, hey, your parents are saying, what are you going to do with your life, Garrison? And you said, I want to be on stage and I want to be a comedian.
Well, there's nothing like graduating from college and then you literally have this giant job opportunity and go, no, I'm going on a road trip and end up in a comedy club. Yeah, that's not. Yeah,
the parents are like, oh no, our son, we won't ever see him again. He's going to get hooked on drugs. I just know it.
Well, it was I just walked into a comedy open mic and this is in Jacksonville, Florida, and somebody said, you should do this. Some girl goes, you should do this. You're funnier than this guy. And I went in there and I did it and instantly worked. I was earning a living in 9 months. It was a weird thing that it
kind of fell into it. You kind of fell into it.
Yeah, but I got super lucky. I got really, really lucky.
And writing material, though. I mean, once she said you're funny, you should be doing this, and you did it. Then you went, I guess I need to start writing some stuff and memorizing the cadence.
I wrote a bunch of stuff. What's weird is the stuff that I wrote. I'm just always surprised that it worked. I mean, if I go back and look at, some old bits.
Well, Garrison, it's not necessarily the words that are written; it's how it's delivered, and that's something that you've got a knack for.
Yeah, I think delivery too. I was accused of being the cotton candy of comedy because I would do something and another comedian would go, "Why are they laughing? That's not funny."
Yes. So let me say, so you did that for 6 or so years. Then you got into the corporate world. You mentioned. Tell me about that.
I went in corporate America earlier than the 80s, and I actually had a good job. My boss fired. I got his job. I was doing good stuff, but I was just having.
What was your job? Was it sales? What were you?
I was involved. I worked for a company that was involved in the funeral industry, and they sold annuities for prearranged funerals. I got this kind of easy job, and then this guy quit. I got that job. I got promoted. Then my boss quit. Ended up in corporate headquarters. I was like a junior VP for this company. I was like 27 years old and doing dope, and I was a junior VP.
Yeah, stability though. I mean, you had a paycheck every 2 weeks. You accrued.
Oh no, it was good. It was, and I was still doing a little teeny bit of stand up around, but not much. I was doing bits and pieces.
Moonlighting.
I did that.
Yeah.
I did that until the wheels came off my life in I guess 1990, and then went back in corporate America, and then eventually went back into stand up. And then I was doing I was doing corporate gigs that paid so much more than stand up, and so I started to really create kind of a corporate funny keynote that was funny. It was leadershipy and salesy and whatever, but at the same time, really back then it was a large part of my act was in there.
Now, a lot of people, at least I try to ask questions that I think my viewers want to know. And a lot of people would say, I wonder how much those guys make, if they're doing those corporate videos. Because they, that like a company like Frito-Lay or IBM, they have these sales conventions. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for the golfing and the 3-day convention. And they have a keynote speaker and maybe some other keynote speakers. It was my record. You tell me if this is around accurate. There was different levels of status levels of speakers. One was around $2,500. One was around $5,000. One was between $7,000 to $10,000 per keynote, and that's a 45-minute to an hour set. Is that close?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a while back. I mean, these days, a bureau, if you're not 5K, the bureau won't talk to you.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things that used to be 25K, more down to 15, 10K. So a lot of people are falling into the same box. But yeah, close enough.
Because there's some people. There's a Connie Podesta was somebody that I did some work with, and
no, I know Connie. I've worked with. Yeah, I know Connie.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, she was.
Well, I know. Oh, well, I can't say that. I know you know her because I know she saw my video. I've got proof that Connie saw my video.
Oh, very cool. Well, I worked with her for just a short period of time with another producer, and some others that really were Randy Pennington. Shout out to Randy Pennington. Stephen Harville. We had a Gary Rifkin. We had Kelly Verla. These were my clients that did stuff.
Pennington's great, and Podesta's great too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and they were doing well. I mean, driving Beamers, and we're in nice clothes. So in my mind, the answer is they're making between 5 to 10K a pop, and in some cases they might even get more. And if you're doing that, as often, so tell me how often you were traveling and how many gigs per year, and because
I was doing much more than most. So I was doing 100 gigs in a year.
God.
Making good money, and it was good. Yeah, 100 gigs a year, and I did 85 gigs in 2019. So I was still doing that many gigs. I mean, I always do 80 gigs a year.
So hold on here, Weston. 85 gigs at around $10,000 each. That will carry the one. That's like $80 million.
Yeah, that's your math. It is not $80 million. But yeah.
So you started to get into realizing that the corporate definitely was better. You could use your comedy skills to deliver messages.
I didn't like stand up anymore. I made a couple of movies that were bad movies. I made the kind of movies where you look at the dailies and go, oh, this is going direct to video for sure. I can tell by looking at it. So I didn't like show business.
Yeah.
So the combination of me not liking show business, I didn't like the people and I was getting, beer commercials and bad stuff. I wasn't interested in doing it. The money was better in the corporate world. I don't know. I felt like I could make a contribution. When you're doing, and I don't want to criticize stand up, but if you're doing stand up, if you get a house laugh every 20 seconds, the club owner brings you back. And that's about all there is to stand up. That's it.
Okay. Well,
if you could, that was all that it was. It didn't matter what you said or did or what your impact was. I don't know. I just didn't feel like I made enough of a contribution.
I can almost say too that as an entrepreneur, as a leader, taking control of where you're going, not being dependent upon a company for your livelihood. You kind of went, hey, I could really just own my own thing. I mean, your whole company is Garrison Wynn, for crying out loud. There's no, I mean, it's you. You're selling. You are the company. And
I'm doing more than that these days. I'm a partner in another company, and we do consulting and some things like that. So there's other things that are going on. I mean, I'm a partner in a company that does everything from, risk management to property and casualty insurance. I'm a partner in that, but I also do Garrison Win Solutions. I'm doing a lot of that. So
okay.
I'm a little more diversified.
Okay.
But what I am doing is speaking all the time. I'm doing virtual events all the time now. So I'm still doing this.
You don't get tired of the traveling and the hotels and the planes and all that?
No, I got to tell you, I'd rather fly to Las Vegas to do a virtual event. I mean, I'm telling you, the virtual events is always a tech check. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, here I am. This is my virtual environment. I'd much rather be with an audience with everybody sitting around. And
right.
I love that.
Yeah. So there. I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned virtual. So what did COVID mean to you, and how did it affect your business? Tell me about that.
I lost tons of money. I mean, my business was driven by live performances, and I was doing 85, 90 in a year. So if all those go away, what do you think happens? So it's quite difficult.
You had them booked out. How far did you have? You had stuff already on when you found out they closed everything down. You had stuff.
They canceled what was on the books. Some of that there was force majeure in place. I owed the money down payments. They paid me back. Stopped all contracts coming in. Stopped all leads, and it was just terrible. It's the worst case scenario. There's not really any way. We've never shut an economy down before. There's no way to explain what that does. I mean, we've never shut down the economy except for this one time. And I was in an industry that became just illegal to have a convention. And I'm not criticizing that. I think maybe we should have shut down the economy. I'm not going to criticize all that. I think we maybe did the right thing, but it wasn't the right thing for me. Yeah.
What are some things that you realized that you were going to have to do to keep the lights on and do your thing?
Let's see. I had to realize I could not be rich anymore. I didn't learn that. That was the big lesson.
Womp womp womp.
Yeah, that was a big. I just had to focus on what I could do. I mean, the virtual events are what they are, and we're doing them every month consistently. I'm doing it. I was warming up today for one we're doing on Friday. We did one, last week. I did a recorded one where you record it and they play it whenever. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So did your clients, because you have a relationship with clients that use you again and again and again. And those clients, did they reach out to you and say, hey, Garrison, look, we're having to send everybody home, working from home. We're not going to be, but we still would like, we still have to sell. We still have to work. How did that go down?
Well, no, most people said, hey, guess what? We're not going to have an event this year. That's what most people said. Some said, hey, we're going to go to virtual and we need blah, 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 blah. And can you do this? And I'm like, yeah. And some people said, hey, we're going to go to virtual. We're ready to go. It's going to be, on May, whatever. And they're doing it.
And so the ones who said we would like to do it virtual, was that your rut-row? I need to get some gear. How am I going to look? How am I going to sound?
I started out, with the big hanging mic, like a TV mic and all that.
The boom
kind of
mic.
Stuff.
Yeah.
A boom mic and all that. And then I realized that I really had to just do this like it was a live deal. So I'm standing here on the stage.
Yes.
And my background's simple. That way we can edit afterwards. If you do a green screen, it looks weird. So I want it very simple. And I'm wearing a lavalier mic, and I just do it just like this.
It looks good. It looks clean.
Raise your hands if you're dealing with it. Raise your hands.
That's so, because see, when I would film you, this is what. That's what. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, what I saw you through the viewfinder of my camera, and it looked just like this without the borders on the TV. So really, it's the same message, just virtual. Yeah. The interaction part isn't there, but your background looks good. You sound great, and so your clients now, and maybe you picked up some new clients who went, hey. So did you have to learn? The camera? You're not using some web camera or anything, are you?
Well, no. Right now, I'm using a Canon 90D. And there's a reason we use this camera. The lens is fantastic. Now, we're no offense, we're going through Zoom. This probably looks like
it's going to be a little.
Right. If we weren't going through Zoom, if we were just doing, Microsoft Teams or whatever it was, and you could just see this camera do what it does, it's a fantastic camera. It's better than it's a DSLR, and it's better than other types because of the quality of the lens and what it really looks like, and the adjustments you can make on it too. You can actually adjust it afterwards, and we can speed things up and slow it down. We do all kinds of cool stuff. But I do this totally live. So basically the audience is out there, they're watching on their laptops or a phone that they've stolen or whatever they've got. They're watching out there, and I'm just doing what I'm doing. And so they're just at home in their underwear because they turned off Netflix or some weird Ben Affleck movie, and they're just watching their phone or watching their tablet or watching their laptop.
No, no interaction as of yet where somebody could raise their hand or text a question or.
It depends. Right now, in front of me is about a 70-inch monitor. That's what you're on.
70-inch?
70, yeah. We can fill this up with little squares, and that way the people can be there and I can see their faces. So sometimes we do that. Now, if we unmute them, we have to be careful because there's always some maniac with the dog and the blender, going on. I don't know why a guy would have a dog, and he's like, I'm just really happy. I got a barking dog and a blender. What the hell are you making? This is ridiculous. He's like making dog food in a blender, whatever.
Yeah.
But some of that happens, so you can't really do that. But I can see them. I did a couple events where I could see the audience. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
And so, obviously you want to stay connected to your clients, and in doing what you're doing now does that. You've been on some of the largest stages across the world, done this for almost 30 years now, for major players in the corporate space. I've
done all the Fortune 500 from American Express to Walmart, you name it, I've been their speaker. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to name someone I haven't spoken to in 25 years.
And that's amazing. And that's a huge accomplishment.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. So over those years, you must have seen some generational changes in the workplace.
For sure. Yeah.
What are those generational changes? And really, the next question would be, what changes have you made to meet the needs of those people?
Well, I need to say this because it is important for everybody to understand it. There's always a generational difference. I was 27 years old dealing with World War II people. And I remember when I was in corporate America explaining to World War II guys, no, I swear to God, it's called a computer. You'll love it. And no, we're not doing that.
Was that when you were called the punk boy boss?
They were called me punk boy manager.
But yeah.
Well, actually, they called me punk ass manager, but I kind of, So it's hard to be effective when you're punk ass manager, but that's what happened. So, yeah. So I dealt with that, and I was that person. I was the tech person. I was the whatever. As time goes by, I think that kind of replicates itself. There are some differences. You and I, a little bit apart in generation, but close enough. We're going to believe things that people 25 years old are not going to believe.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is each generation kind of creates the next generation. So we can't blame them. Like if they are, if some generation is a certain way, who did that? We did that.
Give me an example. What have you noticed? I'd say the difference of people that before the computer generation, before we weren't born with a mouse in our hand. We had to learn these skills, and then the newer generation, who when they were born, they were asking for a phone when they were 6.
Yeah. Well, like you have a son, and your son who's with us today, Weston. He was born just kind of chewing on a phone. He's a kid with a phone in a crib, just chewing on it.
I wasn't that bad.
98, wasn't it? 98?
I had my first cell phone when I was like 10 or something.
All right, so you're a little older than the younger.
I mean, I remember
but that's
coming out.
because your dad held it back.
This is true. We didn't allow it. You were a bad parent if you let your kid have a phone. Oh, that's so bad. I'm like, what? We want to know where he's at.
But the thing about it is that, if Weston right now was traveling somewhere and his GPS went out, he couldn't get there. That's the difference. He wouldn't be able to arrive because he doesn't know where north, west, and south is. He doesn't know a compass. He doesn't have to know a compass because he has a phone that does it. And so the weird news is yes, I can't get a pizza today because this girl lost her phone. She's not coming. She can't get here.
Right. Her battery ran.
But she could deliver a pizza at midnight in Egypt.
Yeah. So they're more resourceful. They're more because of the knowledge that they've learned online.
Well, the technology makes a difference. You can do things with technology you couldn't do without it. So they're, absolutely, it's a plus.
What are some characteristics?
If it's older, you think differently. So.
What are some characteristics that of that generation that you have heard from, and you speak to managers of companies who have departments who have to deal with these people.
You can't do anything early. If you want people to show up at 7:30 in the morning, the 25-year-olds are not going to be there. They're just not coming. They're not coming that early. If you want to get a bunch of 25-year-olds in a ballroom for an event, your event has to start at 10 o'clock, and then you'll be packed.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to. I'm biased because my son is here, and he's heard me talk about the M word. I'm very, very careful about using.
Your son is here because it's 4 p.m. Go ahead.
That's right. That's true. But the millennial, what was the deal? When we called them millennials.
Yeah, because it's stupid. Because the millennials that means they're 1,000 years old. Yeah. Just because a millennial, he's 1,000 years old.
You are a 1,000-year-old.
That's the worst they've ever heard. These millennials, like, really?
Yeah.
What the hell's a millennial?
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think that every generation has their pluses and minuses. It's real easy for us to talk about. But I mean, what generation didn't make it? This generation will never make it. They always do.
Well, companies have to adapt, right? And you work with companies who have to deal with the adapting to change.
But you have to manage people for who they are, not who you wish they were. You have to manage people for who they are, not who you wish they were. So smart managers in corporate America right now are saying, okay, Wesley, we understand how you grew up and what you think and what you believe, and we're going to try to adhere to that as much as possible. Yes, we have to be here on time. We might want to adjust that time if possible. In other words, if we don't start doing business until 10, we're not going to actually be here at 7. Yeah. Where maybe 30 years ago, everybody's here at 7:30. Why? We don't know. Just be here at 7:30,
Right.
So we have to kind of pick our battles, so to speak, to be as influential as we possibly can. Also, we taught Generation Y or the millennials to question everything. So now we have to explain why we're doing everything. We taught them that. That is not something that they developed on their own. We said, question everything, and now they are.
Well, that's true because, I think for me growing up, I worked for the Southland Corporation in computer operations, and I'd meet these guys who were older than me and they were married. I was probably 23, 4, and I was curious. So I would always ask questions like, why do we do it this way? And how does this work that way? And a guy said, a lot of people don't ask those questions, so it wasn't necessarily questioning authority. It was just a natural curiosity. I'm curious, the Doug. Curious George, Curious Doug would call me. Right. So, but the new generation, it seems there's times, not all of them, but they have, like, and I think we've taught them this, but if you said, hey, here's the way you do this, and instead of going, oh, well, show me more, let me try that, it's more like, well, why do we have to do it that way? Can't we do it this way? And we're like, well,
some of it's our fault. What we didn't teach Wesley and it is history. We forgot, we left that out. So when he was in high school, he got a little teeny kind of smattering of history and a lot more about the future and what has to happen about technology and advancement. We didn't teach him that we've always had technology and advancement, that this technology is new technology. We've always had technology. And so what's happening now, and it's tough, and is that they're going to learn lessons they maybe other generations didn't have to learn. I mean, you and I could have the advantage of capitalizing on the mistakes of others.
That's true. I think that they're a little more risky. There's no risk, no reward, which was good, right? But we played it a little more traditional and safe. Like, before I start wearing jeans and shirt, the first day at work, I'm gonna wear my suit, and then everybody makes fun of you for wearing the suit and like, there's the new guy.
But it's also about just knowing. I was on a podcast, and a guy wanted to talk about fascism. He didn't know who Mussolini was. So if you don't know the foundation of your own argument, it's a weird conversation to have.
Yeah.
But the truth about this guy is his idea and what fascism meant to him didn't really have anything to do with the past. He was really talking about what it felt like now. I can't have that conversation with him because actually what he's talking about isn't fascism. It's actually something else. But his heart was in it. He believed in it, and he wasn't wrong about his conviction, and he wasn't wrong about his belief. He just didn't understand the history. So that's a thing where you and I might have a problem. I don't know what to do about that, but I do know that if you and I don't know how to do something, hey, I don't know how to do that. Let me call somebody who knows how to do it. Wesley's going to spend 9 hours on the internet and find out.
Hey, Weston, I'm going to change your name to Wesley, by the way.
Yeah.
Is it Wesley? I'm sorry, Wesley.
It's Weston.
Weston.
Weston,
no,
like the hotel, but with a O.
No, Weston, no.
There you go.
Sorry.
My son, super smart. His friends, they're very intellectual. They've got their own opinions, and I at first kind of was like, man, they're very disruptive. But I'm telling you, they're going to be the ones who are going to like lead things, change things, right? They're not going to like hesitate and go, let me do this to the politically correct way. They're going to be the ones who say, why the hell we've been doing it this way? This is the way it should be done, and not be afraid.
They're going to know more. Doug, they're going to know more because you and I call somebody, how do you do this? And they tell us.
Yeah.
And maybe it's easier. Maybe it's faster. Who knows? Somehow at that point, maybe it's better. But if Weston and other people in that age group, if they just start studying, what happens is in 3 weeks from that point, they know more than the person we would have asked.
That's true.
What I'm finding out. I'm finding out they're learning more than we ever learned.
Yes.
So I think long term, short term, I think it sucks. But long term, I think it's a great idea to be that willing to learn that much.
You know what, though? It pisses me off.
I know it pisses you off.
I mean, like, come on. It took me years to learn what he learned in 3 weeks. Or just it's the way that information is learned. I mean, from doing homework and going to college, the resources that are available at your fingertips through phone and internet, they've figured out a way to get information faster and learn very specific silos. It's really amazing. And there's been many times here in this studio, I'm like, no, you got to plug it in like this. And he's like, well, I had it plugged in this way and it sounded better. And I'm like, wait a minute. What did you do again? But
I can't criticize because when I was Weston's age, I was had no shirt on and was barefoot in the bar. So I can't
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
no comparison.
I was not that advanced. I mean, I think they're more advanced than I was.
It's cool. I actually have, I will say, very positive hope for our future, for the new generation. And though that we might not, and even my parents' generation, they're it's like whoosh, way over their head. But I see the mechanics of how things could really end up for these folks to be, and these are people who are going to be in the workplace, managers, having their own companies. They're going to be politicians. Right. They're going to be innovators. And I really am excited to see, and I'll be retired, so I'll just sit back and watch all this happen.
But they'll be walking around saying the same thing. Remember the old days we didn't have a computer attached to our eyeball? They're going to be complaining.
Yes. Yeah. It's
remember when cars had wheels?
Yeah, that's right. We had to drive on the road.
On the road.
But so here's a question for you. What would you say would be the biggest obstacle or barrier that prevents people from getting what they want in life?
Well, two things. I think one is they don't focus on one piece of something at a time. I've got a dream. I've got a goal. I'm going to go journey to the goal. But there's lots of pieces and parts of that you have to actually do. So you kind of have to kind of be on the journey. The goal doesn't work if you're not really on the journey and pay attention to what's there along the way. So everything can be broken down into pieces. I think a lot of people are very goal focused. They know what they really want, but they don't really know how to actually get it. And I think they need to take a look at the pieces and parts and work on it. Some things are complicated. You gotta figure this thing out to figure that thing out to go there. So that's one thing. I think that people tend to look over what is important. They're looking past what they're working on.
Right. They see where let's say that what they want. Let's just say they want to own their own company, be their own boss, and maybe at the infancy of that thought, and they want to put energy behind it. They imagine themselves getting there in a couple months when it might take longer.
Not just that, but what the step is and the stress that a lot of people are so stressed out these days, young people especially. And the leading cause of stress is knowing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and consistently doing something else.
Yes.
And I think what happens is that you have an idea of what you want, but you've got to do this thing that's in front of you.
Right.
If you can't get this done, you're never going to get it.
Right. And for some reason, they're like, tomorrow's going to be the day I'm going to do that. And then tomorrow comes and they're like,
well, not just that. I want this, and let me do the fourth thing that will get me there.
I got you. Let me skip around or whatever. Right.
Skip around. Right.
No,
sometimes you have to work things in the order that they show up in your life, and you got to solve certain problems.
And they'll figure it out. I mean, they'll figure out that, hey, I wanted to go from step 1 to step 5. And when I did that, and when I wanted to go to step 6, I realized that I needed to know step 2 or 3 in order to get to 7 and 8. And so then they end up backtracking and kind of.
The other thing is clarity. I think there is a kind of an allergy to simpleness these days, and people sometimes aren't very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how smart you are if no one knows what you're talking about. And I think that's another barrier for young people in success, that you have to be able to clearly explain the value of something to get buy-in from other people. So if you want to know why you, 25-year-old, is not getting any buy-in from the 55-year-old, is they may not know what you're talking about, and they're not going to ask you because they're afraid to look stupid. So if you're not clear, you have no influence at all.
Very good point.
Reminds me of my Aunt Ethel. So I was growing up as Aunt Ethel, who was old, and my dad was old. Everybody was old. I'm young. And my Aunt Ethel, I hadn't seen her in 20 years. So my dad went to see, I guess she was 80, and my dad was 80. We hadn't seen Aunt Ethel in more than 20 years. And Ethel looks at my dad, and she was a genius, by the way, but not very clear. And Ethel looks at my dad, looks at me, looks at my dad, looks back at me, and here's what she said. She goes, "You know something, Garrison? You look more like your daddy than your daddy looks like himself." What? What I mean is your daddy, who doesn't look like anybody now, did then, No, we don't know.
No.
And what was important about Aunt Ethel is how smart she was. I mean, smart, her whole life smart. But people didn't know that. People couldn't work with her or deal with her because she talked over everybody's head. And she didn't do much. And there's a good example. It's a really good example of making sure that, a dog isn't loyal because you love it and pet it and feed it. A dog is loyal because you scratch him in places he cannot reach. You bring anybody's dog, I'll scratch them on the top of their head, wherever they can't get their paws. That's where I'm going to scratch. And if I do that, they'll follow me anywhere. So, what can you give people that they can't do for themselves? And
well, I think you're exactly right. And I wanted to jump in because before I lose the train of thought is that to simplify it, and I do it, we talked about this on an earlier podcast, where I want to influence this person to give me a bag of money, right? And so in order for me to do that, there was a time where I felt like I needed to explain a lot of the details so that justified the fee, right? Now I've learned that really this is a person who doesn't really care about how it gets done, but I should probably simplify it so that they can go, if we do this, it will take this amount of time, it will cost this much, and this will be the value that it could bring to your company. They're more likely to go, let's do it, and you didn't have to spend the time, and you have the freedom to do the things behind the scenes without telling the client every little thing you're doing. And that's a skill that's learned over time.
I agree, but I think the big lesson for young people, this happened to me about a couple of years ago at an airport. This guy was 22, 23 years old. He was talking to me and I didn't understand. And finally, he basically told me, he goes, I can't help you, sir. If you're too dumb to understand, then I can't help you. And I said, okay, well, does everybody else understand? He goes, no, everybody's stupid. I said, if everybody's stupid, who do you think the idiot is? It's you.
That's a great point.
You're not clear.
Yeah.
You're not clear. If only you get it, you're a dumbass.
That should be a red flag. If you find yourself in a room full of people going, you know what I'm saying, right? And they're like, no, not really. But you do, right? No. All of y'all are stupid. That might be a red flag to go, maybe it's me. You don't want to admit that it's you. It can't be me because you're in your own delusion. So it's learning like, okay, it's like a game. Like you have to figure out, if you ever watch Survivor, I don't watch it now, but when it first came on, there was a lot of strategy. I mean, social strategy, alliances, and having your foot in two different camps and not backstabbing, and those are very applicable.
But that was fake. If you're watching Survivor, here's the camera. You go like that. Oh, it's a food truck, and they go back.
That's true. But let's just go with the facade that we all believed. The facade, okay. The social. I almost think that, Garrison, they should teach kids social classes on social skills. I mean, they're psychology.
But we did it. If you raise a kid, okay, and you just put that kid in bed in a sweatsuit and then wake them up without combing their hair and then hand them a biscuit and throw them into a car, and then you want them to have social skills.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. You can't raise someone without social skills and go, these kids should have social skills.
Well, do you think that contributing factor to the lack, because when we grew up, basically it was figure it out, son, and so you're going to sink or swim. You're going to make the mistakes. I'm not going to coddle you. But do you think that once the family household, women went back to work, daycares, and the kids really were not. Do you think that is any part of them? I don't know if it is or not. As I'm saying, you think that would actually help them?
You can make that argument, good or bad. What I'm trying to tell you is that I've noticed a difference. For me, my mom said we had to show up for dinner at 6:30. They taught us what fork to actually use. They taught me what you could and couldn't wear to dinner. They taught me how to wind a watch. My father explained things to me. They made sure my mother would when I got up, I was like 7 years old. She made sure my hair was combed. I was well coiffed. She had little scissors. She cut the strings off the clothes. And sent me out looking a certain way. That's not what's happened. If you're 25 years old, your parents were busy. They didn't have time to do that. They said, okay, hey kids, we're going. We're just, showers are optional. We don't have a hairbrush. Get in the car. And, then you want to know why this kid shows up. And, you can always tell the homeschooled kid, right? He's barefooted and he's got his lunch in his pants. Yeah. So we really, you can't criticize a generation for behaving a certain way when you didn't give them the opportunity to learn what you learned. And we did. So I think that's the truth. we can talk about it, and I can be a guy my age, and I complain about young people all the time, and I got a whole list of complaints I can go through.
And of course, with the large family you got tons of kids. So why don't you have kids? What's the deal with that, Garrison?
I just like how we got there. Well, I do have.
So we're getting a little personal here, right?
I have an ex stepdaughter, but anyway, who's 24 years old. No, I just, I've spent a lot of time on the road traveling doing this. I mean, I didn't get married till I was 42.
Did you had relationships with somebody, right? And did they want to have kids and settle down and have the white picket fence?
No, not if they're dating me. They don't.
Okay.
No. Anybody who's going to date me probably doesn't want that.
Did you think? Some actors and actresses, they'll go, "Well, we had kids and we took them with us on the set and they traveled with us." And you thought, no, this kid's going to be screwed up.
My stepdaughter and my wife at the time, and stepdaughter, we went all over the place. They traveled with me as well. But I date some women who are quite a bit younger than I am, and that has its own problems. But so.
Yeah, you dog, you.
No, I mean, I have a choice. I mean, if I'm dating in my age group, they want me to help them with their beach house. So it's either help them with their beach house or help them with their backpack.
Yeah.
So I got to figure out.
You've got a lot of energy. Yeah. I say for your age, that makes it sound pretty bad, but I mean, you're right. But you're very wound up and you've got passion. Yeah. You don't just kick around and like watch TV all day. You can't do that kind of thing. What do you do to occupy your time for fun?
I will sit down and watch TV, and I'll sit on the couch. I mean, I'm an up and going when I have to go. I'm go, but I do try to rest and relax. I don't sleep well, so I'm not the best relaxer that there is.
How many hours of sleep you get?
3, maybe.
No shit.
Well, last night 2, probably.
But that's a normal thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, if I can get 4, 5 would be the max. I could probably stay asleep longer than 5 hours.
That's do you find that to be strange? I mean, the people that you know or friends of yours they need 8 hours and you only need 3.
No, my girlfriend needs like a whole day. She has to just sleep the whole.
So you go to bed at midnight, wake up at 3, or you go to bed at 3 and wake up at 6 or 7, or.
It depends on what I want to do. If I go to bed at midnight, is a problem. I'm up at 2 or 3 in the morning, so. I'll typically go to bed later, like 3 in the morning, or if I got to get up early. But sometimes I'll go to bed at 6, a.m. and wake up at 10 a.m. or just. I usually wake up based on what I have to do to get the maximum rest I can get. So I'm not somebody that consistently just gets up just to get up, because when I've done that, I make myself too tired.
So do you to fill those hours that a lot of people don't have? A lot of people will read a book, and do you watch your Netflix, and what do you watch? What kind of shows do you watch?
I'm busy. I mean, I'm on the phone doing something my life just has a lot of parts to it. I mean, I have a lot going on. Considering I don't think that I have a lot going on, but I mean, I'm on the phone talking to people, phone calls all the time, until 10 o'clock, 11 midnight.
But I can't. But why do I feel awkward to say? So tell me a show you watch on TV you recommend watching, or a movie, or what band do you listen to?
Okay, so I like Shameless a lot. Is a good show. Mm-hmm. I also watched that Gambit movie that was really, really good.
The Gambit movie.
I'm also was a big fan of The Crown. I watched all that.
Okay.
I like the TV show Outlander with Catalina Balfe. It's a fantastic. Outlander is one of the best TV shows ever. I watched all of Breaking Bad. And watched that. Talking. I also like Better Call Saul.
That's even better. Yes. Okay, now
I've watched some TV, and there's I gotta tell you, there's some very, very good TV. Euphoria, which scares parents to death, but it's a very good show with really the young actors in that show. I mean, that's the next generation of gigantic talent.
Really?
Big talent.
I'll try. I saw it. Is it Netflix?
Zendaya, what is her name? Zendaya. She's just a big gun actress.
Do you know her, Weston? You heard of those? The Aurora?
Yeah. Zendaya.
Yeah.
Okay.
From Spider-Man.
And there's the transgender girl on there that's also a super good actor. And then there's probably 5 people in that cast that are all under 22 that are fantastic. Great actors.
All right. Now, what about music?
Well, I mean, I just listened to a lot of old. I went to, I was.
It's like you're embarrassed. It's like you're embarrassed. Look at you're blushing almost. You're like, well, okay. I do like music. Come on.
But that's the part. If your girlfriend's younger, then you just get beaten up by your music. Like, oh Jesus, we're not gonna listen to that. Like, So,
but if you're by yourself, you want to chill out. Okay, there's two moods. There's I want to relax and chill out. And maybe rest. And then there's the windows are down. I want the radio on.
I think I'm like everybody else in my age group. I'm going to listen to Steely Dan and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. That's
what? So Weston is a big classic rock guy. I trained him well.
I have a Led Zeppelin shirt on.
He's all rock, Led Zeppelin, like you said, Steely Dan, all that kind of stuff. They did it.
I saw Led Zeppelin live. I saw them in 1974, and they were terrible. They just not a great live band.
You're right. I heard that.
They played things weirdly out of sync. Black Sabbath was the opposite. Black Sabbath was fantastic. Saw them in 1975. They were killer. They were fantastic. Ozzy, believe it or not, Ozzy could sing and was great. It was all great. You saw why they were so famous when you saw them back then. They were a tight band. They sounded better than the record. David Bowie, Bowie was better than the record.
You know who was also good? Iron Maiden sounded just like the album when you saw them live.
Yeah, they're a skill band. Van Halen had problems. David Lee Roth always had problems live, but people liked him. And I wish I could tell you the great story, but I did see Freddie Mercury and Queen. I saw them in 1981 when they were at the height of what they were doing, and I was hammered, messed up. So I don't really remember the concert. I remember getting my leg wedged between a toilet and the side of a stall. So that's
what you remember most.
I had a bathroom problem. But I was there though, but I don't remember how good that was.
Okay, so that's good. Now, what about Pink Floyd? Did you get into them?
I saw Pink Floyd once. I saw them at the Jacksonville Coliseum. I think I saw them. It was before the Wall tour, whatever tour was before.
So
that.
Wall, it was Roger Waters and David Gilmour together.
Yeah, yeah. It was before the Wall. It was right before the Wall came out, and they were really, really good. But
they're more of a music that I listen to for an album. I want to chill out with an album, opposed to sing live, unless I'm like on acid or something.
But an hour of Pink Floyd, and you kind of lose the will to live. I mean, it's just kind of.
The new stuff. So I saw Floyd with David Gilmour when Waters broke up. My friend told me you need to see Roger Waters live. It's pretty good. But for me, like Delicate Sounds of Thunder. Some of the later after Wish You Were Here and some of that stuff. Right. I ride my bike to that. It's just the rhythm of it and the words. They're very kind of deep but yet relatable lyrics. I recommend Delicate Sounds of Thunder, and there's another one, Momentary Lapse of Reason. Wasn't that another one?
Well, I was a big Aerosmith fan, but that's because of my age. I mean, if you're in high school in the late 70s, Aerosmith.
I saw Aerosmith 3 times, Garrison. I loved Aerosmith.
I saw them 4 times. So I saw them good and I saw them bad. I was in the Tangerine Bowl in Orlando, Florida in 1979, and they were booed off stage. They were so bad and so messed up. Steven Tyler was singing and he sounded like somebody was strangling a lamb. Like,
wow.
It was really bad. And they got booed off stage, and then Ted Nugent came back and played another set because Ted Nugent had opened for them, and Nugent came back and was great. People forget how good he was. A great showman.
He's not just an NRA freak. He was actually really good. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking back in the day. Now who knows? But
yeah. Well, that's some good reference. I mean, you and I we're very similar in the age group. I mean, I always gravitated towards The Who, Van Halen, and then Steely Dan. I watched a documentary. It's either on Prime or on Netflix. But I
got a great story.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was in Atlanta. I was a high school student. And I went to college there, but this was before I was in college. And I went to a place called the Atlanta Cafe, and they said, "Oh, the house band is really weird." I said, "Okay." Well, a guy comes out there, and he doesn't look rock and roll at all. And there's these women; they look weird. It's just the weirdest thing. And he got a cowbell and a drumstick, and he starts beating that cowbell. And there's no music. The music starts, and the drummer's pretty good, guitar player's pretty good. And it's the weirdest thing. It's not disco, which was going on at the time. It's not rock and roll. And the guy starts to sing, and he can't sing. It's like the singer can't sing, It's weird. And these two girls with weird freaking hairdos, and they had duct tape on their backs, and they had lights in their bouffant hairdos. And I said, who the hell are these guys? He goes, oh, they're the house band. They're a local band from Macon. They're called the B-52s.
No kidding.
Yeah. And they were not, you couldn't say they were good. It was just weird as hell.
Wow.
And then that same summer, this guy said, you got to see this band. And I saw them, and I thought they were weird too. And then he said they were called the Walking Heads. He said the Talking Heads.
The Talking Heads.
At the same time, so those are the new age bands. But I got to tell you, the truth is, when you first saw them, there was no frame of reference.
Well, David Byrd, is that right, Weston? Is the guy from the Talking Heads? Yeah, I mean, he's got that book, How to Make Music or something like that.
But their early music was, the Talking Heads was weird. They opened up for a band called Skip Castro, which was a college band that played around, and the Talking Heads toured with them, and they were so unusual. It's kind of interesting that, like, people ask me, oh, you saw this stuff. Yeah, I can say I went and saw Black Sabbath, and they just blew the doors off the thing. It was just Ozzy tore his shirt off and threw it in the audience, and 27 people died trying to get his shirt. Just,
Yeah,
so
what is the Talking Heads is, and then I asked myself, who is my beautiful wife, and where is my beautiful home?
But that's the 80s. I'm talking about in the 70s. They were
okay. So that was interesting.
They were low key and super weird.
That's where you have the edge on me. You've got the backstory. I saw what they ended up becoming. You saw them when they were rising to that point.
That's right. When I saw the B-52s, you would not understand what it was.
Wow.
I didn't understand why the singer couldn't sing. I mean, this guy couldn't carry a tune in a freaking bucket. The two background singers were great singers, and the girl playing the piano, and they could sing, and the guitar player, the drummer were great, with a lead singer who was untalented, beating. It didn't make any. Years later, you see it, it's a kind of a cool thing, but at the time, didn't make any sense.
Sure. Well, we already talked about entertainment, movies, shows, music. Let's close with talking about sports. Are you a sports fan? Do you watch football, baseball, what?
I do. I watch football. I played sports in high school and middle school. So I watch sports. I watch professional football more than college football, probably because I went to a college and a football team.
So I understand that you have an association with Hank Aaron.
Yeah, so strange story. So my dad worked for Magnavox in the late 60s and 70s. And so one day he came home and said, look, we're testing out this new thing. It's called a console video game, and it's got a little thing that plugs into a console, right? And like a Pong or something like that, but it's got all these features on it.
Pong.
And back then, the goal was to sell it to adults. They thought adults would play this in the 70s. Anyway, so he said, but whatever you do, don't take it to show and tell at school. I'm like 11 years old. So I took this demo. There was only 4 on the planet Earth. And I took this demo to the 5th grade, and people went nuts. The science teacher couldn't understand how the TV wasn't involved. I kept saying, no, you plug it in, and the stuff's in the box that affects the TV. The science teacher said, for sure, the TV's involved. Nope, you plug it in.
So there's a screen. So you said it's a console. So there was a controller thing, and the TV was built into it, the screen?
No. You take any TV and plug the TV into the console.
Yeah, like Pong. Yeah.
And so the smarter you were, the more you couldn't believe it worked. The dumber you were, you bought it. I get it. But if you're super smart, where is it? It's got to be the TV. Anyway, so it worked. People went crazy for it. My dad said he got 400 phone calls. Anyway, they started trying to push this thing forward. And finally, after a few years, they got it marketed, and it was called Odyssey. It was the first console video game ever. Oh,
I remember Odyssey.
So they hired Julius Erving and Hank Aaron. At the time, Hank Aaron, it was 1974. He just hit 715 and beat Babe Ruth's record. I would have been 13 years old at the time, and I got to travel with Hank Aaron from city to city as we demoed Odyssey video games for Magnavox.
Wow.
And I would hand out bats and autographs. We would do all these radio stations. I hung out with him. And people asked me about that because it was a weird experience. And the thing I get asked the most was about the hate mail that he got from breaking Hank Aaron's record, right? About the hate mail. They were people.
Well, what do you mean breaking? You were with Hank Aaron, and they were mad about him breaking his own record?
No, he broke Babe Ruth's record.
Babe Ruth's record.
So what happened was he was a black guy, and there was a business in the 70s, and people were upset about that to some degree, and he got a lot of hate mail. So finally we were having dinner, and there were a couple of reporter guys there, and they said, Hank, I understand you're getting 1,000, 2,000 very specific hate mail letters a week. What's going on? What do you think? And what he says was really interesting. I've never forgotten it. He said, my mama told me when I was 14 years old that I played baseball so well, there might come a time where I played baseball so well that I could offend white folks, that might happen.
Wow.
And so she prepared me for the situation. And he said, I understand that people have heroes and what they believe in. And we love to have a hero. My goal was never to beat anybody's record. My goal was to play baseball. I tried to hit as many home runs as I could. You could have never told me when I was 20 years old I was going to beat Babe Ruth's record. That wasn't even anything I considered. But I did the best that I could. I played a lot longer than he did. I played a lot longer than he did in better conditions than he did. But I did the best that I could, and that's what happened. And he goes, I can't speak to somebody's prejudice, right? Mm-hmm. But I know people feel like they feel. And I certainly understand. Shocking, anybody who would be that humble. The way he handled that question, because, I mean, those reporters, they were really looking for something, and they weren't going to get it from Hank. And it was really interesting how he felt about it. And then they said, well, when you were running down the third baseline, people were behind you. You looked behind you like you were worried who was behind you. And Hank Aaron goes, well, I played a lot of baseball, and never when I'm running from third base to home where there are 17 people running behind me. So of course I look behind me.
Wow.
When does that happen?
Well, did you have conversations with him? Yeah. Did you? I mean, you hung out.
A little bit. I talked to him a little bit. He was a nice, humble man. He was a very kind man, and he knew how lucky he was. He felt lucky and felt forwate.
He wasn't rich, was he? I mean, did he seem like, he was a wealthy man?
As my father said, they were paying him for endorsements, but he didn't get a lot of opportunities. Not everybody wanted him in those days to endorse things. I unfortunately didn't hang on to all the posters and signed baseballs and all that in the late 70s. Ended up, I don't know what happened.
So what did you, I mean, you kind of said it, but what was your takeaway, from that? What did that teach you? You were young, but
I was young. And so I can't tell you I absorbed the world's greatest lesson, but if I look back, on that and think about it, what I think I learned was that it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. And it doesn't matter how upset or mad somebody else is. You have the right to do what you have to do. And sometimes you kind of have to forgive people for who they are. People are who they are, and that's who they are. And it's not necessarily any of my business. And someone's opinion of me isn't necessarily my business.
Well, the other thing that came to mind is that you can be the best in the world at something, and people are going to try to tear you down for that exact thing. And when you're on top, no matter white, black, race, doesn't really matter. If you're on top, you're gonna have people that are gonna try to pull you down. But in this case, he had a unique circumstance. It was almost a perfect storm. He's a talented baseball player. He broke records, but it was also during a time when the social way of America was not that friendly towards blacks, and so he had to be humble. And sounds like, based on what you're saying, to be humble, know that he's good. His grandmother told him, you offend people because you're so damn good. And now he's living that, and he's having to cope. He's having to deal with the reality of his own success.
But what's interesting, though, was at the same time, his friend, who was Willie Mays, was the opposite. Mays was furious with the circumstance and vocal about it. So he was different than a lot of people at the time.
Interesting.
I just remember the idea that, not necessarily of forgiveness, but the idea that people are going to do what they're going to do, and their opinion of me and that much of my business. I mean, yeah, sure. You liked your hero. You're a really prejudiced dude who has a hero, and I'm a black dude who broke that hero's record. I get it. You feel that way. I don't agree with it or like it, but it's just the idea that he was like, yeah, that
they have a right. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's their opinion, and I respect that.
Yep.
He was able to respect that they didn't like that about him.
Yeah, it was to me remarkable at the time, considering what was going on. I mean, that's just not exactly. Nothing against Willie Mays, but I just remember at the time he was very vocal about the injustice and was, thought Hank Aaron should be more revered than he was at the time. So it's kind of like Willie Mays was talking about it more than he was.
Wow. Well, that's a great story. That's a great story.
But for baseball fans out there, what record that no one will ever break, maybe for Hank Aaron, no one has ever hit that many home runs after age 35.
That's a whole thing. Yeah. Well, listen, we're about to run out of time here. But we've talked about some great things. I really was fascinated to hear how you're doing because again, we've been through, it's been, 20 some years back when the internet started, and where you are now. You've really done an incredible job with your business, and to be traveling like you are, doing what you like to do, doing what you're best at, and influencing companies, to do better for their employees. And then COVID hit, and we talked about that. And I think that, do you have any, when do you go back on the road, or when do you anticipate to kind of go back on the road? Has anybody reached out to you? I've
got events that are booked coming up in June, it looks like. And we're seeing the number of infections, coronavirus going down, death rates going down. It's all just like that.
Yeah.
And as that happens, we'll get back to where we were. I know people say, it's going to be the new normal. And no, it's never that new and never that normal. But we'll be back to something that looks similar than it was before.
Yeah, and for those clientele, those corporations that are a little more strict on social distancing and masks, that might want to take advantage of the virtual Garrison Wynn, they can do that. And those who are ready to kind of take a leap of faith and go to a live convention and have their people. It's not
going to be a leap of faith, Doug. We're going to wait until people are ready. We're not going to. Those events will cancel unless the society.
We live in Texas. I mean, when everybody was freaking out up north about, we would go to a restaurant and there's people drinking and sharing. They're licking door handles and going, I don't need to wear no mask. This is before the spike hit, right? So there are certain corporations out there that are a little more swinging to the right that go, look, we're going to meet regardless.
I agree. I also agree that if you're licking door handles, COVID's not your biggest problem.
That's very true.
If you're licking door handles, you got a whole different set of. Change your mess.
Well, the future actually kind of looks. I'm excited to hear how it went back June, July, August. The things should be back in the swing of things. Yeah. Thanks for your time, man. It's very good to see you again. Hopefully, we can do some more of these in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. It's been a long time. It's good to see you. Absolutely.
Great to see you too, Garrison. We'll take care, and we'll talk to you real soon. Okay, pal?
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
You bet.